Sometimes a scene gets rejigged during shooting when the cast and crew realize it'll work better a different way, or production constraints might force them to change tack. But usually a movie's ending is pretty firmly set in stone, because that's the last thing the audience sees before their final impression of the movie crystallizes. I'm Jess from Whatculture, and here's 10 movie endings actors didn't know were going to happen. Number 10. Pearl's insane smile. Pearl. T. West's Pearl lay claim to one of the most memorable endings to any horror movie in recent times, with the final image lingering on Pearl, played by Mia Goth, as she pulls an unhinged smile at the camera. A tear-soaked grin that continues into the end credits. Yet according to Goth herself, this prolonged smile wasn't in the script, but was in fact something that filmmaker West came up with on the day of shooting. West suggested that Goth try an experiment, smiling for an extended period while the cameras were rolling, simply to see what results they got. There was no concrete idea of what West was going to do with the shot during post-production, but Goth simply committed to holding the smile for as long as possible, her face becoming increasingly strained while waiting for the director to call cut. And yet, despite being something cooked up at the last minute, it's one of the most memorable moments of the whole movie. Number 8. Matthew is a pod person. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978. 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a rarest of remakes that arguably betters its predecessor, particularly with its bleaker ending, which sees protagonist Matthew revealing to Nancy that he too has been replaced by a pod person. The moment that Matthew meets up with Nancy and suddenly lets out an alien scream while pointing at her is supremely brilliantly jarring for the audience, but also for actress Nancy Cartwright, who was intentionally kept in the dark about how the scene was going to play out. In a 2018 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, director Philip Kaufman revealed that the film's ending still wasn't locked down during shooting. Once screenwriter W.D. Richter and Donald Sutherland both agreed with Kaufman that a downbeat finale was the way to go, they conspired to withhold this information from Cartwright to ensure her horrified reaction was as genuine as possible. And so Cartwright's shocked recoil at Sutherland's reaction is 100% real, though we'll assume her subsequent distress is just some good old-fashioned acting. Still, Cartwright got more of a heads up than the executives at Studio United Artists, who didn't find out about the grim ending until Kaufman screened a cut of the movie for them. Number 7. Tony Stark's funeral. Avengers Endgame. It's no secret that Marvel Studios is extremely ferociously protective of spoilers, and that was never truer than with Avengers Endgame, the payoff to more than a decade's worth of MCU movies. Endgame concludes with the sacrificial demise of Tony Stark, followed by a funeral attended by most of the Avengers and Tony's various loved ones. Yet because shooting a scene featuring literally dozens of actors presented such a huge risk of leaks, Marvel decided to mislead the overwhelming majority of the cast until the very last minute. Throughout production, Tony's funeral was instead referred to as the wedding, and indeed most of the cast turned up to set that day believing they were appearing as guests for a wedding scene. In an interview with EW Radio, the Russo brothers said 90% of those actors showed up and they had no idea what they were doing. They thought they were there for the wedding, so we had to tell them, here's what's happening in the story, because again, we're just trying to protect information. People that don't have information, it makes it easier for them not to spill the beans accidentally. Sebastian Stan backed this up in an interview with Jimmy Fallon, confirming that he only found out about what he was really shooting on the day. Number 6. Phillips is treated for shock. Captain Phillips. Captain Phillips unforgettably concludes with the title character being rescued from his Somali pirate captors and being brought on board the USS Bainbridge for treatment. Director Paul Greengrass sticks with a visibly traumatized Phillips as medics attend to him while he thanks the rescue team for saving his life. It's a phenomenal piece of acting from Hanks that bafflingly failed to secure him a Best Actor Oscar nomination, yet it feels like the perfect way to wrap things up. But believe it or not, this scene wasn't actually on the script or planned out in advance. In a press screening at the New York Film Festival, Hanks confirmed that Greengrass had the real captain of the USS Bainbridge on set and simply asked him what happened once Phillips was rescued. And so when the captain explained that they took Phillips to the infirmary for treatment, the movie's crew did just the same. Despite the scene not being scheduled or prepared for in any way, Greengrass had some lights quickly set up in the infirmary and shot Phillips being treated with a few unsuspecting real-life medics on the ship. Greengrass encouraged the medics to simply treat Hanks like they would any real patient, while assuring them that if the scene didn't work out, it wouldn't be used in the film. But the scene certainly did work, and despite being thrown together with basically zero planning, it serves as the movie's biggest emotional climax. Number 5. I Am Your Father, The Empire Strikes Back. David Prowse physically portrayed Darth Vader in the original Star Wars trilogy, while the voice was of course dubbed during post by James Earl Jones. And in the case of The Empire Strikes Back, George Lucas went to great pains to conceal the climactic revelation during Vader and Luke's battle on Bespin, that Vader was Luke's father, so much so that only himself, Mark Hamill, and director Irvin Kershner actually knew about it. The shooting script for Empire instead had Vader tell Luke that Obi-Wan killed his father, ensuring that David Prowse certainly had no idea he was actually taking part in what would then become one of the most iconic plot twists in cinema history. The real line was of course then dubbed in by Jones. Though it's been suggested that Prowse spoiled the Vader parentage twist to the press 2 years before Empire's release, in recent years this has been dismissed as Prowse making an off-the-cuff joke that coincidentally happened to be true, given that Lucas kept the twist so secret during shooting. Number 4. Soon the Four Musketeers, The Three Musketeers, 1973. Richard Lester's 1973 version of The Three Musketeers is absolutely a fascinating example of actors not knowing things were going to happen at the end of their films. When the cast signed up to star in the movie, it was conceived as a gargantuan 3-hour epic, but when it became clear that the film wouldn't meet its set-in-stone release date, the decision was made to split it in two. And so this led to The Three Musketeers ending with a title card teasing a sequel, The Four Musketeers, complete with a montage of clips from the already shot sequel. Yet the majority of the cast weren't told about the split until incredibly late in post-production, prompting most of them to file lawsuits to ensure they were compensated for giving the studio 2 films for the price of 1. This led to the Screen Actors Guild introducing the Salkind Clause, named after the Three Musketeers producer Ilya Salkind, to ensure that single movies couldn't be split into after the fact without approval from the cast. Number 3. Solomon Lane Survives, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation saw Sean Harris make his debut in the franchise as villain Solomon Lane. But like most of the cast, Harris wasn't quite sure exactly what he was signing up for. Since Christopher McQuarrie came aboard the franchise as director with this movie, he's adopted an unconventional filmmaking style of picking out cool locations to stage set pieces and more or less writing the story as he goes along. The disastrous potential of this speaks for itself, yet for Rogue Nation and especially sequel Mission Impossible Fallout, the results have been pretty spectacular. Except perhaps not for Harris, who ended up shooting a very different ending to the one he expected. In McQuarrie's own words, Harris only agreed to star in the film if Lane would be killed off at the end. But McQuarrie ultimately ended up changing his mind, saying, Sean Harris did not want to be in this movie. He didn't want to be in a franchise movie, he's just not that kind of guy at all. And when I finally convinced him to be in it, the first thing he said to me was, promise me you'll kill me. So just don't bring me back because I don't want to be in 5 of these movies. On the last night of the shoot, he was like, is there any way you can kill me? I said, yes, I'll kill you right now. With the stroke of a pen, you're a dead man. If the audience likes you, you got a twin brother you don't know about, or a clone, or a prequel, you're coming back, whether you like it or not. We've got you, man. And so, unable to bring himself to off a potential rich villain, McQuarrie ditched the original plan of having Ethan Hunt kill him off, ending the movie instead with Lane being captured and gassed unconscious, only to reappear in Fallout. Number 2. My House, Knives Out. The final shot of Rian Johnson's Knives Out feels so brilliantly witty that it must have been included in Johnson's original Oscar-nominated script, right? Well, wrong. In the closing scene, Martha stands on the balcony of her recently inherited mansion and presides over the degenerate members of the Thromby family while drinking from a mug that reads, "My house, my rules, my coffee," with only the words "my house" visible above her fingers. It's a simple yet brilliantly clever visual gag, and yet one which Johnson and DeArmas accidentally stumbled upon while shooting the scene. While appearing on the Empire Film Podcast, Johnson said, "It was kind of an accident, a happy accident. I knew I wanted her to sip tea in the final shot, and I had had a separate idea of my house, my rules, my coffee as that first shot in the movie, after that first big dramatic shot of the house, breaking the tension with kind of a goofy modern joke mug. And I was like, oh, she can have that at the end. Then when we were doing that close-up, she was up in the balcony and I yelled up, 'Sip the tea,' and she brought it into frame and those words came up and I was just like, oh, that's pretty nice." Better yet, once Johnson knew he had solid gold in the can, he even went back and adjusted a prior shot of Marta holding the mug, using VFX to move Ana de Armas's fingers to cover the words until the very final shot. Genius. Number 1. Neil goes back for Dell, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles feels like such a pitch-perfect movie that it's tough to believe it was basically a miracle pulled out of an editorial nightmare, with the final cut being whittled down to a tight 92 minutes from an original assembly of 3 hours and 45 minutes. Perhaps the most significant post-production choice was to majorly retool the movie's ending. Rather than return for reshoots, Hughes and editor Paul Hirsch ingeniously reordered and re-edited existing footage to tell a similar but different story. On a 2019 episode of the Light the Fuse podcast, Hirsch explained that the original shot ending was ridiculed by test audiences. This ending saw Neil find Dell hanging out in the train station, having been driven there by a truck driver, before launching into a long, sappy speech about how he tends to attach himself to people ever since his wife passed away. Neil then pities Dell and brings him to his home for Thanksgiving, and test audiences felt that this ending portrayed Dell as guilt-tripping Neil, with some even laughing at his climactic speech. It fell to Hirsch then to try and repair the ending without using any new material. Creatively, he made use of outtakes of Steve Martin riding the train, cross-cut with footage of Dell throughout the movie, and reversed a shot of the train exiting the station to imply that Neil had had a change of heart and went back for Dell. The original heart-to-heart scene between Neil and Dell was then cut down to its most basic components. Collectively, these cuts made Neil seem more compassionate and Dell less pathetic, and ensured a feel-good holiday classic was born.